Our story begins in the year 2563, 3 centuries after a devastating war on humanity known as the Fall. We meet Dr. Ito, a cybersurgeon who is in search of usable parts for his repairs and stumbles across a cyborg girl. It looks like it's in rough condition, however he notices her brain is still working, so he takes her with him to repair her. After the procedure, we can see the cyborg, now repaired, opens her eyes for the first time. She looks at her new body in amazement and examines herself in the mirror before getting dressed and heading downstairs where Ito was working on other cyborg patients. Ito is relieved to see her awake and offers her breakfast, and he begins to get a bit anxious as she realizes she has no recollection of who she is. Ito tells her that he does not know where she is from, but reassures her that she will recover her memories. Damn, that sucks. Ito takes her outside where she is in awe, seeing the Iron City for the first time again. The Iron City is a lower-class area beneath Salem, the last remaining Sky City which holds the elites. Ito explains what happened after the war, telling her that the survivors stayed here on Earth while the rich went to Salem, and the purpose of the Iron City is to perform labor that benefits the Sky City, yet nobody is allowed to go there. Seems fishy. Ito asks the girl if she remembers her name, which she doesn't, and decides to name the girl Alita.
Alita.
I love it!
Ito and Alita explore more of the city and she points out a TV playing a motorball match on it. She asks him about it and he tells her it is not worth watching. After getting some food, Ito leaves Alita and she shares some food with a stray dog. She notices a wanted poster for a criminal who has murdered 6 women. Suddenly, a large police robot known as a Centurion arrives. Instead of stepping aside, Alita reflexively stands up against it until a boy named Hugo steps in and shoves her aside. Alita quickly rescues the dog from harm. Hugo is impressed with Alita and tells her not to intervene with the Centurions again as they are the city's robot guards. The two of them are having a good conversation until Ito shows up and crashes the party. Bro had to ruin it. Later that night, we see a murder happen on the street. Shortly after, Alita wakes up to the sound of Ito returning home, carrying a large suitcase and his hands are covered in blood. What's going on here? In the morning, Alita helps Ito with his patients and learns that a man's cyborg limbs were stolen by jackers, who are criminals who sell body parts on the black market to support that motorball show from earlier. She also hears that another woman was killed the previous night, making her suspicious of Ito and his wounded wrist. Later that day, Alita is out and about and bumps into a mysterious woman named Chirin, who grabs Alita's arm and examines her. Weirded out, Alita runs away. We see Chirin meet with Ito, where we learn they were once married and that Ito actually used the parts he and Chirin originally built for their deceased daughter to restore Alita. Chirin tells Ito she wants to resume their old partnership of creating motorball bots that could potentially fund her way into Salem. Ito, however, refuses to create monsters, as he puts it. After Chirin departs, Ito notices her leaving with Vector, the man who controls the factory. Meanwhile, Alita spends time with Hugo, who is playing street motorball with his friends. Hugo teaches Alita how to play, lending her a pair of skates, and after a few times Alita quickly adapts and scores some points. After the game, Hugo offers to take Alita home and on their way spot a hunter warrior named Zapan. He carries a sword because guns are illegal in Iron City. Over the next few days, Alita spends the mornings with Ito and the afternoons with Hugo, and he takes her to a secret lookout spot to see the incredible view of Salem, and joke about how the scrapyard below is just filled with the garbage from Salem. How romantic. Hugo also says that if Ito found her here, that means she must have originally come from the sky. Later that night, back at home, Alita pretends to be asleep and notices Ito sneaking out. She trails him into an alley where he is following someone named Nisiana and finds him removing a weapon from his suitcase. Alita quickly jumps out to stop him, since she already suspected him of being the murderer, and is quick to find out that Ito is actually a hunter warrior who tracks down criminals for bounties. This scene exposed the two of them to a trap set by Gruishka, whose subordinates Nisiana and Romo corner them. Ito attacks Romo, managing to slice off his arm, but Romo and Nisiana soon overwhelm him. Desperate to help, Alita leaps into the fight and displays extraordinary combat skills, dispatching Romo with ease. Meanwhile, Gruishka holds Ito back. Alita then kills Nisiana just as effortlessly. Damn, she is a badass. Stunned, Gruishka challenges Alita, and in the middle of the fight, Alita suddenly experiences a flashback of fighting on the moon while wearing special armor, with a comrade named Gelda referring to her as 99. Shaken but empowered, Alita dismembers Gruishka's arm with Ito's weapon, forcing him to escape through a hole in the ground. After, Ito and Alita go to the Hunter Warrior headquarters to claim the bounty on Nisiana. Alita tells him about her brief memory and demands answers.
Who am I?
So back home, Ito tells her the truth about her body supposed to be used for his dead daughter, who was named Alita. She was stuck in a wheelchair and was brutally murdered by a junkie who invaded a clinic in search of drugs for their motorball match. which explains Ito's hate of the sport. Unable to cope with their daughter's death, Chirin left, while Ito became a hunter-warrior to avenge her. Now, Alita's mind and core are original to her, powered by an antimatter microreactor, an incredibly advanced technology not built since before the fall, implying Alita is over 300 years old. It all makes sense now. Meanwhile, Gruishka returns to Chirin and tells her about what Alita did and begs to be rebuilt. Chirin agrees to rebuild him while Vector interrogates him. Vector does not show interest until Gruishka's demeanor changes and he speaks in the voice of Nova, who is Zalem's overlord. Nova can hijack any cyborg he chooses. Speaking through Gruishka, Nova warns that Alita's battle techniques are Panzerkunst. He instructs Chirin to upgrade Gruishka and send him to kill Alita. Then Nova briefly controls Vector as well, promising Chirin a trip to Zalem if she remains loyal. Soon after, Ito searches for Gruishka in the bounty registry but finds nothing, meaning something shady is going on. Alita tells Ito that she also wants to become a hunter-warrior, but he forbids it. Pissed off, she runs off to find Hugo at a live motorball match. Backstage, he tells Alita that a motorball champion can earn passage to Zalem. Alita notices both Chirin and Vector are present. They design cyborgs explicitly for motorball. The current champion isn't theirs, so Chirin requests Vector acquire his body parts. Moments later, the champion is ambushed by a gang of jackers in a ring of fire. They load him into a van, removing his arms for Vector to sell to Chirin. It's revealed that the jackers are Hugo and his friends. Vector instructs them to deliver the arms, then personally kills the champion. The next day, Hugo and his friends take Alita outside the Iron City to admire a scenic lake where a damaged ship from the war crashed. Because it belonged to the United Republics of Mars, most folks avoid it. Hugo believes exploring the ship might unlock Alita's memories, so she dives into the water without hesitation. Able to breathe underwater, Alita walks through the lake bed and enters the craft, bypassing a strange door and shutting down its protective force field. Following an intuitive sense of recognition, she discovers an advanced, heavily armored cyborg body called a Berserker and brings it back with her. Alita returns home and begs Ito to fit her with a new body, but he refuses. It is a weaponized model built for Panzerkunst experts, and Ito believes that Alita deserves a normal life without violence. Way to be a buzzkill. Still determined, Alita goes to the hunter-warrior headquarters to register as one. Afterwards, Alita and Hugo go to a bar where many hunters hang around and Zappin notices her. Zappin taunts Alita and warns her that she'll be competing with them for kills. Alita could care less. That's my girl. She instead asks the hunter-warriors if they would join her in hunting down Gruishka. The others merely laugh, and Zappin ridicules her ambition. Annoyed, Alita challenges Zappin, where if she defeats him, they must promise to help her. A wild brawl commences, and with Hugo's help, they outmatch everyone. The fight is short-lived as Ito arrives and puts a stop to it, threatening to charge them all for future repairs if they continue. That'll get him, bro. As he reprimands Alita, Gruishka bursts in, killing a man to flaunt his new enhancements. When the stray dog rushes to protect Alita, Gruishka kills it. Outraged, Alita uses the dog's blood to paint battle lines on her face and duels Gruishka, and Hugo pushes Ito aside, saving him from the attack but leaving Alita to fight Gruishka herself. They both drop down to the ancient ruins below to fight. His new upgrades make it way harder for Alita to do damage and actually allow for him to damage her. Their fight continues and Alita hides behind a wall. Gruishka tells her how she was created by Nova just like him. Shaken by this, Alita goes in for another attack but her body is severed by Gruishka's upgrades. Oh no. Right when this happens, she has another flashback of Gelda telling her never to give up because they must defeat Nova. Invigorated, Alita uses her remaining arm to ricochet off the ground and punch right through Gruishka's eye. Before he fights back, Ito and Hugo arrive with backup which forces Gruishka to flee. Ito takes the damaged Alita home and begins to work on her body, aiming to merge her consciousness with the Berserker body, which instantly adapts to her. Hell yeah! Alita feels stronger than ever, discovering that her fingers can channel plasma. Ito reminds her that her body is merely a shell, and it's up to Alita on how she wants to use it. Later on, Alita meets up with Hugo and shows off her new body. Okay girl. After noticing that she is a lot more touch-sensitive, he leans in for a kiss. Meanwhile, Nova, who is still in Vector's body, commands Gruishka to destroy Alita. He notes that she is one of the last weapons of the Technarchy and wants her heart. Hating how Nova takes over his body, Vector comes up with a plan. He invites Hugo for a drink and we see him compliment his drive. Hugo assures Vector that he is working hard to earn credits so that he can go to Zalem, but Vector is more interested in discussing Alita. We skip to the next day where Alita shows up at Hugo's apartment, where he's nursing a hangover. Hugo confesses about his dream to go to Zalem and Alita offers to help him with whatever bounty money she earns to buy Vector's ticket. Not wanting her to risk herself, Hugo refuses. Alita, proving her devotion, literally offers him her heart, the power source in her chest, but Hugo gently turns her down. He explains that Vector is letting her audition for Motorball so she can move closer to her dream of entering Salem, and Alita agrees to participate if Hugo will be her coach. Little do they know, Zappin is observing everything from a distance. On the night of the big Motorball match, Ito equips Alita with custom skate feet and protective gear. She chooses the number 99 to honor her memories. On the other hand, we see Vector bribe other players to kill Alita for a huge reward. On the streets, Hugo finds his friends encounter another cyborg from whom they plan to extract parts. Hugo tells his friends he doesn't want to be a part of that gig anymore, and suddenly Zappin appears and confronts Hugo about his thieving ways and mentions that Alita may forgive him if he's dead. Hugo points out that he doesn't have a bounty, and in response Zappin kills the cyborg and pins it on Hugo. His friend attempts to help, which results in a quick slicing to heaven. Hugo retaliates by throwing a Molotov-style bomb to distract Zappin and escapes. At the stadium, Vector tells Chirin that he has manipulated Hugo into bringing Alita, anticipating she will be easy prey. Ito arrives and tells Alita through her helmet communicator that all the players are actually bounty hunters trying to kill her. The match begins and the players immediately go after her. Determined, Alita fights them anyway, enduring a few blows but still outclasses them. "You go, girl." She shows off wild moves with her slender but powerful body and takes out many players quickly. The crowds are cheering loudly. Alita gets a phone call from Hugo, who desperately needs help, so she breaks out of the arena to go help him, in which the players follow. Alita fights a few off and Zappin also catches up to Hugo. It becomes a very close encounter, but Alita is right there in time and kicks him away. Alita looks up and sees the bounty sign with Hugo's face and is shocked. He admits to being a jacker yet insists he never killed anyone. Zappin, however, reminds Alita of the Hunter Code. She must slay criminals. Unable to kill the man she loves, Alita hesitates, so Zappin stabs Hugo himself. A centurion arrives to claim Hugo's body, so Alita flees with him. In a secluded spot, Hugo confesses he has never taken a life, and they share a kiss. A moved Chirin, watching from the shadows, volunteers to help them save Hugo. Moments later, Alita emerges carrying Hugo's severed head, with his brain connected to her core. The centurion recognizes she has technically claimed the bounty, but Zappin notices Hugo is still alive and tries to expose her trick. Because Zappin attacks another hunter warrior, the centurion declares him a criminal instead. Free to act, Alita slashes Zappin's face with his own sword. "I hated this guy from the start." Sometime later, we see Ito has successfully fused Hugo to a cyborg body to keep him alive. He informs Alita that Vector's promises are all lies. No one can buy a real ticket to Salem. Ito knows because he and Chirin once lived there, only to be exiled by Nova when their daughter was deemed imperfect. Meanwhile, Vector confronts Chirin for letting Alita escape. Recalling Alita's example of compassion, Chirin confesses she no longer cares about going to Salem and wants out of the deal. Seeing no other option, Vector orders his guards to harvest her body parts for sale. Determined to avenge Hugo's suffering, Alita storms the cyborg factory, the same building hosting the Hunter Warriors' headquarters, and demolishes every centurion in sight. Barging into Vector's office, she finds Chirin's body dissected and ready for trade. Utterly shocked, she doesn't notice Gruishka sneaking in. He wounds her hip, sparking another flashback to the war. Alita, Gelda, and their squad had attempted to enter Salem by climbing the cargo tubes. Most of their unit was destroyed aside from only Alita and Gelda, who in that moment vowed to destroy Salem. Moved by her memory, Alita taps into her berserker body's healing functions and kills Gruishka with a couple of swift moves. "Let's frickin' go, Alita." Demanding to speak with Nova, she realizes the Overlord is controlling Vector's body. Nova taunts Alita, threatening Ito and Hugo, so she kills Vector to stop him. Right then, Ito contacts Alita to report that Centurions have forced Hugo to flee. She dashes to find him climbing the same cargo tube in a desperate attempt to reach Salem. Alita begs him to climb down, insisting Nova is merely using him to get to her. Hugo refuses, but Nova deploys another serrated defense ring. Alita dodges it, but Hugo's new body is obliterated. Alita manages to catch his arm, but it's too damaged to hold his weight. Before falling to his death, they exchange a few words expressing their love for each other. Time passes and Alita actually becomes a motorball superstar. During a major match, she raises her sword skyward in the direction of Salem, silently vowing to win the championship and confront Nova once more. So much for Ito saying it's not worth watching. I would